Some guitar breaks grab headlines, others hide on album sides waiting for the right set of ears. Here are 15 solos from the 60s, 70s, and 80s that never topped charts but still raise goosebumps the moment the pick hits string. Number 1. The Bomber, James Gang, 1970. Joe Walsh walked into Los Angeles record plant carting a Les Paul he'd bought used for $200 and a Fender Twin that still smelled of Midwest bars. Engineer Bill Simzik had just wired a Leslie speaker into the control room patch bay. Walsh asked if guitar would work through it, and spent the next hour chasing a rotoplane warble. The take that stuck starts with a barroom shuffle, then tilts skyward. 3 overdubbed lines, left, right, and center channel fed through a maestro fuzz, and dialed 1 cent sharp for natural chorus. In the middle section, Walsh drops Ravel's Bolero, a move he later called a classical theft, but nice and loud. ABC Records pressed the album with the full 6-minute version, only to snip the Ravel quote after a cease and desist, making the first and second pressings of Rides Again 2 different beasts. FM DJs preferred the uncut edition. Cleveland's WMMS spun it so often, Walsh joked they owed him mileage. Live, he'd run the whole solo while drummer Jim Fox mimed dropping bombs with stick flips. Eddie Van Halen, still a California teen, taped that solo off KRLA and slowed it to half speed to learn the wide bends. There's a bootleg cassette in circulation that proves it. Number 2. Ice, Camel, 1979. Campbell had just downsized to a 4-piece when Andy Latimer booked time at Farmyard Studios, Surrey. He set his battered 1959 Les Paul Gold Top in front of a Silverface Fender Twin, added a short Echoplex slap, and insisted on low lighting so he could hear the blue notes. Producer Rupert Hine opened every room mic in the Barn Loft live room, giving the solo its airy, almost outdoor feel. Latimer works in layers, volume swelled harmonics, a slow climb to the 17th fret high D, then a held note that rings 7 full seconds before sliding down the neck, long enough that Hine's assistant started to fade, only to be waved off. The melody leans on A minor pentatonic, but Latimer sneaks in a major third bend under the Rhodes comping, a touch Jeff Beck later praised backstage at a Montreux jam. Though I Can See Your House from Here missed the UK Top 40, Melody Maker readers voted Ice Best Instrumental of 1980, beating out Mike Oldfield by 200 votes. Modern prog players cite the track whenever talk turns to how much phrasing fits inside one sustained note. Stephen Wilson uses it as his reference for setting delay tails, and Steve Rothery once quipped that if Latimer had copyrighted the closing bend, half of 80s neo-prog would owe him royalties. Number 3, Marquee Moon, Television, 1977. Tom Verlaine spent the winter of '76 refining a 2-chord vamp on a battered Jazzmaster strung with flat wounds. The smoother feel let him slide the high E up a full step without snapping. When Television set up at A&R Studios on West 48th, engineer Andy John suggested recording live, vocals and all, to keep the CBGB edge. Take 3 ran 10 minutes. Verlaine liked the feel, but thought the bend after the bridge went sharp. So John spliced in 1 bar from take 2 and punched a single tambourine hit to hide the cut. The centerpiece arrived 6 minutes in, a 105-bar solo where Verlaine circles 1 B minor motif, nudging the neck pickup tone control between phrases so each repeat glows a shade warmer. Richard Lloyd's rhythm part drifts to the edge of the pocket, then snaps back on the dotted 8th echo from a Maestro Echoplex. No click track, just eye contact through the glass. But the UK press declared it Album of the Year, pushing it to number 28 on the British chart. Magazine polls still rank the solo high, yet Verlaine once told a BBC host, "It's me looking for the next note for 6 minutes." Number 4, Mother Sky, Can, 1970. Michael Caroli and company hauled their gear into a crumbling castle near Cologne, Schloss Norvenich, setting up a studio in the ballroom where the ceiling still dripped rainwater. Drummer Jackie Liebezeit locked a halftime motoric groove for exactly 1 minute before Caroli's Stratocaster entered. The guitarist, using a Vox wah, left half open for that nasal growl. With the tape rolling, Damo Suzuki shouted improvised lines against the wall at stage right, letting natural slapback add its own reverb. Producer Hogar Chukai captured everything on a 2-track Telefunken. Caroli's solo unfolds across 14 minutes, climbing the neck in quarter-tone pushes that threaten to leave the drum loop behind, but never quite do. The band considered a fade-out, then left the full take, ending only when Liebezeit finally clicked off the hi-hat and said, T. Released on the Soundtracks LP in September 1970, the track clocked in at 17 minutes 31 seconds. Too long for single release, but perfect for Munich's late-night Radio Bremen slot. Guitarists in later decades caught on. John Frusciante practiced the ascending run during Blood Sugar sessions, and Thurston Moore sampled the opening wah squeal for lecture demos on feedback. Mother Sky still sits in krautrock crates alongside Hallelujah, yet it's Caroli's Patient Climb, recorded in a leaking castle, that many players chase first when dialing in a fuzz-wah groove. Number 5, 'Cause We've Ended as Lovers. Jeff Beck, 1975. Stevie Wonder handed the tune to Jeff Beck on a cassette marked "For Your Fingers Only," telling him to treat it like a vocal he didn't have to sing. Beck walked into Air Studios with George Martin producing and set up 2 amps. His battered Fender Champ for the verses, a cranked Marshall 50-watt for the peaks. Most of the solo you hear came from a 54 Les Paul Oxblood, tone rolled back so the treble blossoms when he rides the volume knob. He stacked just 1 overdub, a Strat line fed through an early MXR Phase 90 for the gliding high squeals at 2 minutes 40 seconds. Martin kept the rhythm section hushed. Phil Chen's jazz bass on spongy flat wounds. Richard Bailey tapping hi-hat with matchsticks to give Beck room to bend notes until they wept. Blow by Blow hit U.S. shops in March 1975 and sailed to number 4 on the Billboard 200 with 0 singles. Jeff Beck! FM DJs airing the 6-minute cut in full during mellow-out blocks. Guitar mags still polled the solo top 10 for phrasing. Derek Trucks once said he learned volume swells by playing the first 30 seconds on repeat until the cassette wore thin. Number 6, Another Girl, Another Planet. The Only Ones, 1978. John Perry tracked the lead at Escape Studios in Kent with a borrowed 61 SG Standard. String action set low enough for elastic bends, but high enough to keep the vibrato honest. Producer Nick Bramlett ran the SG into a high-watt half-stack, then patched an Echoplex just on the repeats, so the main line stayed dry while Echo spiraled behind. Perry took 3 passes, the keeper is take 2. He misses a slide up to the 14th fret at 1 minute 38 seconds.
Another girl, another planet, another girl.
CBS pressed the single in April 1978. Despite rave write-ups from NME and Melody Maker, it peaked at number 56 in the UK and never charted in the US. College stations from Boston to Berkeley, though, loved the mix of punk snap and classic rock melody, spinning the song beside early Police cuts. Later players noticed the replacements lifted the descending 4-note lick for Answering Machine, and Blink-182's Tom DeLonge has name-checked Perry's solo as proof you can cram taste and flash into 8 bars without wrecking the chorus. Number 7, Working Man, Rush, 1974. Long before odd meter suites, Rush were a hard rock trio playing weekday bars on Toronto's Yonge Street. They cut Working Man for their indie debut at Eastern Sound in late 1973. Alex Lifeson's 1971 Gibson ES335 into a Marshall Super Lead, volume set where the red clip light never switched off. Producer David Stock let the tape roll past 6 minutes because Lifeson refused to fade a solo that started on sharp. string-raked chords, and climbed into double-stop bends he'd lifted from Cream bootlegs. When Cleveland DJ Donna Halper spun the track on WMMS that spring, factory callers jammed the switchboard asking which local band wrote their anthem. Mercury signed Rush within a week, rushing, pun fully intended, a U.S. pressing that eventually nudged Billboard's album chart. Live, Lifeson stretched the break by trading licks with Neil Peart's tom rolls. Later evenings pushed 9 minutes, giving Geddy Lee just enough time to retune the Rickenbacker on stage. Modern fans rave over the 2112 era, but guitarists still study this solo for its raw bends and talkbox-free sustain. The sound of a Canadian club rig turned all the way up with no road crew to stop it. Number 8, T for One, Led Zeppelin, 1976. Presence sessions in Munich were tight. Robert Plant hobbled on a broken ankle, and Jimmy Page was determined to bottle a slow blues that wouldn't clone Since I've Been Loving You. He dimmed the lights at Musicland Studios, cradled his 59 Les Paul number 1, and pushed it through an orange 100-watt head, dialed hotter than studio etiquette. Engineer Keith Harwood placed just 2 mics, an SM57 on the grill, a Neumann U87 6 feet back, letting the room echo fill the gaps John Bonham left with brushy ride hits. Page tracked the main solo in a single late-night pass, climbing past the 15th fret on pure feel. At 6 minutes 29 seconds, he hangs an F-sharp bend so long Plant's next vocal phrase nearly overlaps. Atlantic never picked a single from Presence, and T for One closed side 2, meaning many casual listeners lifted the needle before the slow burn hit. Zeppelin only played it once on the 1977 U.S. tour during a Copenhagen warm-up, where Page stretched the outro into a feedback haze and Bonham laughed about blues in a blizzard. Page and Plant revived the piece in 1998, merging it with Since I've Been Loving You, finally putting the solo on a stage big enough for its late-night heartbeat. Number 9, I Heard It Through the Grapevine, Creedence Clearwater Revival, 1970. Cosmo's factory sessions were winding down when John Fogerty called for one more take, an R&B cover they'd stretched at rehearsal into a swamp rock marathon. Fogerty strapped on his black Les Paul Custom, cranked a custom tuck-and-roll amp past safe limits, and hit record. The band rolled for 11 minutes. Each time Fogerty thought he'd rapped, Stu Cook's bass pushed another round, so the solo kept growing, weaving staccato double stops around Doug Clifford's shuffle. Producer Russ Gary later said the main lead was a single pass, no comps, recorded closed-mic'd with an SM57 and a distant RCA ribbon 6 feet back to catch the room's natural slap. Fantasy Records didn't pick a single, figuring AM radio wouldn't touch an 11-minute anything. Yet FM jocks in San Francisco jumped on it, often fading it midway, where Fogerty bends a high B like a siren. The LP sold more than 3 million copies that year. Plenty of buyers flipped straight to track 9, needle dropping right on the first pick scrape to hear what a full-length bar band rave-up sounded like when nobody hit stop. Number 10, Telegraph Road, Dire Straits, 1982. Mark Knopfler wrote the lyric on a bus ride up Michigan's US 24, then took the idea to the power station in New York. He dialed in a red Schecter Strat through a roaring Laney head, louder than anything on previous Straits records, and asked engineer Neil Dorfman to keep tape hiss audible, so the slow build felt like gears turning. The song runs 14 minutes, but the main solo doesn't kick until the 9-minute mark. First, a handful of vocal-like bends on the neck pickup, then a 5-note motif he repeats, while toggling to the bridge pickup for extra bite. Knopfler cuts loose at 11 minutes 30 seconds, throwing in rapid-fire pull-offs he'd woodshedded on Chet Atkins tapes, all tracked without a pick, just thumb and first finger. Vertigo issued a 6-minute single in Europe that stalled outside the top 40. Live audiences, however, heard the full blast. On the 1983 tour, Knopfler often pushed the solo past 7 minutes, the last note ringing while Alan Clark held a single Fender Rhodes chord under his elbow. Guitar techs still cite the track when explaining why Knopfler keeps compressor pedals off his board. Every swell and fade comes straight from his picking hand. Caught hot on 2 Studer machines, synced for extra headroom. Number 11, Got to Give It Up, Thin Lizzy, 1979. Black Rose Sessions took over Paris's Pathé Marconi studio in early '79. Phil Lynott arrived with a lyric sheet about late-night excess. Moore and Gorham showed twin leads could snarl as much as they could sing. Number 12, Sabra Cadabra, Black Sabbath, 1973. Morgan Studios in London saw Sabbath tearing through Sabbath Bloody Sabbath with more ideas than tape reels. Tony Iommi wanted a blues turn inside the metal grind, so he grabbed his battered red SG, set a Laney supergroup head to full, and hit record. The riff chugs on an open E until 2 minutes 30 seconds, when Iommi steps forward with bends that hang just shy of the pitch, a trick he developed after losing fingertips and switching to lighter strings. Guest Rick Wakeman from Yes dropped by with a cooler of Heineken, sat at the studio's mini Moog, and laced synth clavs under the solo. The band tagged a loose blues jam onto the back half, Iommi sliding between pentatonic runs and quick jazz chords he'd woodshedded during the Volume 4 tour. No single ever shipped, but KMET Los Angeles loved the groove and spun the full 5+ minutes at drive time, prompting listeners to phone in asking who the honky-tonk piano player was under all that fuzz. Later metal acts cite Sabra Cadabra for showing heavy riffs could swing. Iommi called it a night in the pub put to tape, one where the guitar never stops grinning even as it growls. Number 13, Blue Sky, the Allman Brothers Band, 1972. Dickie Betts carried the tune into Criteria Studios, Miami, late summer 1971, humming the melody he'd written for his wife, Sandy Blue Sky Wabagajig. Producer Tom Dowd suggested Betts keep the vocal light and let the guitars finish the sentences. Betts took the first solo with his gold top Les Paul, tone knob rolled just shy of bright. Duane Allman followed on a cherry burst Les Paul, sliding up the neck with his trademark Coricidin bottle slide. The handoff at 3 minutes 15 seconds wasn't planned. Duane caught Dickie's eye through the glass and nodded. Betts eased back and Dowd kept the faders where they were. 2 weeks later, Duane was gone in a motorcycle crash. Downtown Macon Radio spun the tape at memorial speed, replaying the twin lead break as proof the brothers' dialogue was caught on vinyl. Eat a Peach dropped in February 1972, with Blue Sky tucked midway through side 2. Capricorn didn't press a single, yet FM stations from WNEW New York to KSAN San Francisco picked it up for Saturday morning daylight slots. Guitar players still point to the solo's conversation approach. Betts' major key sparkle answered by Duane's slide gospel voice, as a lesson in sharing space rather than stealing it. Number 14, Dogs, Pink Floyd, 1977. David Gilmour tracked the main leads at Britannia Row Studios in spring 1976. His black Strat plugged into a high-watt DR-103 feeding a custom WEM 4x12 cabinet. Engineer Brian Humphreys opened a stairwell door and set a second mic halfway up the concrete steps. The natural slap from that space turns Gilmour's bends into slow echoes that drift behind Roger Waters' low-string acoustic. About 8 minutes in, Gilmour rides a single D minor pentatonic shape for 24 bars, nudging the whammy just enough to make each repeat sound like it's breathing. The band had played an early version, You Gotta Be Crazy, on the 1974 tour in a faster key. Dropping it down let Gilmour stretch notes until they almost stalled. Animals arrived in January 1977. No single, but album-oriented stations ran the full 17-minute track at night. Listeners calling to ask, who plays the dog barks? Answer, Waters on a VCS-3 synth. Live, the inflatable hounds drifted over the crowd, while Gilmour's solo rang from a scaffold at midfield, the longest walk he took during the set. Modern pedal demos still use the Dog's bridge to show off clean sustain. Set the compressor mild, hit a D minor chord, and see if it floats half as long as the one recorded on a London staircase almost 50 years ago. Number 15, Throw Down the Sword, Wishbone Ash, 1972. Andy Powell and Ted Turner laid this twin-lead closer onto Argus after a dawn rehearsal in Devon. Both played Gibson Flying V's through cranked orange heads, but they split roles. Powell on the bright neck pickup, Turner darker on the bridge. Engineer Martin Birch set one mic close and a second 10 feet back, so the harmony felt like two guitars trading across a valley. The solo begins with unison bends, then drifts into parallel thirds that hover just off pitch, an idea Powell pinched from early Byrds records. No single emerged, and AM radio wanted shorter songs, yet late-night FM jocks loved the fade-out duel and used it to end mellow blocks. Thin Lizzy's Scott Gorham later said he swiped the twin-lead concept wholesale, and Iron Maiden's Adrian Smith kept a cassette of the track for bus listening during their first U.S. run. Wishbone never cracked the American Top 40, but anyone who's played a Flying V at sunset knows the closing bends here by heart. And that's all we have for you. Missed a favorite? Drop the title and we'll spin it next time.